day from 10 to 2. So right now, meet and greet. After some prayer, talk about real stuff. Man, what's your name? Malcolm, they said it last night. Yeah. Okay. Hey, what did you call this? Yeah, I'm with Will too. Okay, Lexi. Yeah, but all right, man. I know it's late. You write your name on my card, but it's all good, man. Yeah. Let's go from check two. Yeah, check two. Yeah. So it'll be no time for this. Right. Yeah, I got a little G. It's not simple G. You know what I'm saying? I got a couple guys. You late, man. Come on,
Okay, guys, I think we're about ready. Well, you want to come right here? Get you right. What you looking for? So you're fine, and we'll face the room, but at least you know we got the camera. You be in the camera shot. Okay, guys, we'll go ahead and get started. I know we're going to have a few people coming in. I want to thank you guys who were prompt. In fact, can I bring you a little bit closer? I do want to take advantage of that. Yeah, right. Good to see everybody. Appreciate you guys. My name is Leslie Huddleston. I'll start with saying I'm a FOH. I'm a friend of Horatio, so I guess that's what we all are, right? And I'm happy to be here on behalf of Sports Psychology Solutions. That's my background as a sports psychology consultant, doing work in the digital space. And if it wasn't for this man, Horatio Williams, I'll probably still be somewhere in corporate America getting ready to have a stroke. I'll be on my second stroke. But his leadership, his grassroots work inspired me. I remember coming in this building when it was just stucco. A lot of you guys remember that time. And he's seen the vision. He's doing something great. We are going to get to the man of the hour in just 1 second, but I do want to, again, commend you guys for coming out. I know there's always a struggle that we don't necessarily get our coaches out like we need to, but we got a brain trust right here. And just if anyone asks, this is being broadcast live on YouTube at the TheSPSEdge, the TheSPSEdge. So if anyone is texting or whatnot, they can reach out. And this will be a piece that could be an educational tool when we leave from here. So your comments will be very appreciated. I can't move on to the man of the hour without talking about the man himself, Horatio. Horatio, do you want to say anything formally just to greet the guests or anything about today's event and what else is going on?
Well, I want to thank Will, first of all, for coming down. As all these coaches know, it's very rare to get somebody from the High School Athletic Association to come down and really let y'all boys out here and see if we can change some of these rules and get these July, and Lizzie, thank you all your work. I want to thank all the coaches. You can see who are the coaches that's really concerned about the kids and want to be a part. I guess it was a 707, or it was a scrimmage in this room. We couldn't get enough chairs in this room. But I want to thank you guys for coming out and shouting to move forward. And this is really like working with Michigan High School Athletic Association.
And before we get into introducing Will McCoy, I want people in the room to share who they are. I think that's really important to the conversation, to the context. Again, this is going to be broadcasted live, so if you're not supposed to be here, you're supposed to be somewhere else. You can use your nickname, and be cool with that. That ain't no problem. I get it. But I'll just start right here. We can go around the room and you can share it, and we'll get to it. You want to go ahead?
One of them, Javon Burks, grew up in Hyde Park, played at played at PSL, played at Bowling Green State University, Northern Lion. Got my bachelor's, master's in Bowling Green. I'm a field operation manager at Chrysler. I'm also an athletic counselor, and I work with student athletes inside and out of PSL.
Go ahead.
No, Daryl Washington, Star Sportswear, we supply pressure wear clothing for athletes, high school, college, doing approximately 2 years now. Louis Whitlock, I'm also with Sports Activewear. As Daryl said, we specialize in compression garments. We can do uniforms, we can do warm-ups, we can do socks, we can do actually whatever the teams need. But I've been working with Daryl actually for quite some time. I'm a retired corporate exec, and this is my passion.
Malcolm Pennington, retired educator, early childhood education, been involved in, I'm a referee, I've been involved in signing officials for Detroit Public School Leagues for over 20 years. Currently also signing basketball officials for Tri-State Lions. I've signed football officials. I work football at the Division I level for a while. And I'm just interested in holding up our end of the bargain as far as making athletics good, fair playing field for student athletes, especially for our community. Horatio Williams, I've been associated with him since he got started having all of his tournaments and so forth. I've worked with closely with H. And just tip my hat to him for all the great community service he continues to do.
You're a part-time comedian too, tell that part. Great. Coach, go ahead. You want to go ahead? Please.
Drake Wilkins, high school football coach, head football coach for the last 40 years.
Okay. Coach.
Coach Robert Shaw for the Michigan Community Varsity Girls.
Right.
Mark Russell, head football coach at Cass.
Kelvin Shepard, assistant football coach at Detroit Martin Luther King High School. Also, a product of what the subject matter is all about as far as kids and grades in school. From being a knucklehead when I played at Detroit Osborne, who didn't understand the application what grades were all about. We ended up missing the boat as far as having a chance to go to college. We also missed the boat about not understanding what to do and how to have avenue for being successful. Unless it was like folks like great books who understand what's the next step for kids who do miss the boat and don't stay qualification. So understanding this platform is very, very important to what the ratio is trying to do. Because like I say, I'm a living example of what happened, but I'm also a coach for 43 years in the state of Michigan who was lucky enough to be inducted in the state of Michigan Coaches Hall of Fame. So I thank you for coming out today. I thank you for understanding the ratio. I'm more than thank you for understanding what our kids need. And I thank all these men who come out here and young ladies to help us understand about getting a platform to help this situation out to a better understanding of everybody in the city of Detroit.
Coach, congratulations on your Hall of Fame induction, and also congratulations on your regional championship Friday. You could have did something about the weather, but I guess not. But we enjoyed that. Congratulations.
Well, Mr. Cutler got some kind of connection with God. Good man upstairs. We got to accept what's going on because guess what? The game still goes on whether we want to deal with the weather or not.
You're right. You're right. Well, thank you. Tatiana, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Tatiana Grant, and I work with marketing agencies, of which we have clients that kind of range the spectrum
She's an excellent resource too, so definitely take advantage of her being here. Please go.
My name is Demetrius Ware. I am currently the head boys basketball coach at Lutheran West High School in West Atlanta, Michigan. I have been coaching in Detroit for 32 years. Started off in Little League and then left to coach at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, Oakland Community College, and so forth, Detroit Public Schools. I did 2 years of Steve at Rogers. So I've been blessed to see them, and like I said, anything from Horatio, anything that help our children and our community, I'm on board.
Right. Go ahead, coach.
My name is Brian Cheney. I'm the only certified sports social worker in the state of Michigan, only male, the only female, also works with me on the Pediatric Counseling Services. A product of Detroit PAL, Detroit Public Schools. I ended up going to Detroit Catholic Central though, and I played D1 in Eastern Michigan. So right now I'm a certified hypnotherapist, certified sports social worker, and a master level sports social worker. My purpose in life right now is to be a stigma buster, to let people know that athletes are not robots, they are people, they have emotions and feelings that need to be addressed, just like if somebody blows their knee out, you'll have every medical person out there taking care of them, every medical person trying to get them back on the field, but when it comes to mental health, we're not addressing it the same way. And being a former ball player, and I know many of you all in here are athletes, so I know that when I stop playing ball, I'll wake up many days crying because I dreamt all night that I was playing football, busting head. And I wake up and find out I'm an old man, and I can't do it no more. So to have that strong athletic identity, and then to have to go into real life and switch gears, you know what I'm saying? What I'm letting athletes know now, it's the same thing that made you successful in sports, are the same things that make you successful in life, that drive, that dedication, that commitment, that sudden change, that passion, all that. So as a sports social worker, I'm in the liaison between the players, the coaches, the administrators, the teachers, the medical staff, whoever. And you know, I think it's also feel that mental health is major right now, right? So definitely that's what I'm carrying. And anything I can do to be of assistance to anyone in this room, I will. It's funny how God works. I just read about Mr. Williams. Last week was on a phone call with 2 engineers who knew him. I walk into a restaurant and there he is sitting there. So we engaged in a conversation. I told him I would be here today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
You had a dream you in the game, you forgot your helmet.
Nah, you know, we really did.
So my dream be, I'm about to get in the game, and then it's like, no, you forgot your helmet, I wake up like, 39 years old.
Not that one, but I have Mr. Buster again.
Right.
That's great. And I just want to add before we get to Will, that term you're doing, you develop athlete identity foreclosure. We talked about that last time we were here, which is an issue, and it's going to be important that we keep developing what you're talking about and getting into that. Last thing I'll say before we introduce Will, it's not making a joke about police brutality, but I'll tell this in relative to you guys being here about asking questions. They talk about police officer pulled 2 guys over, and he went over and he smacked the passenger. He said, "What you smacked me for?" He said, "Because I knew when you get down the road, you was gonna say, I wouldn't let him do that to me." So what I'm saying, ask your questions now. Don't leave and be like, "I should have said this, or we should have said that." Okay, so let's do it like that. And again, this is being streamed live on Facebook, as well as the TheSPSEdge on YouTube. So text people, encourage them to go there. This will be an educational piece. And finally, speak up when you ask a question so it can be picked up and we can make sure we hear everyone. So with that being said, I'll introduce who we're here for. The meet and greet is for Mr. Will McCoy, the Assistant Director of MHSA. And I'll do it like this. We were on a short trip between here to Chicago on a plane. That's an up and down. And I asked who you were in a brief time. Give us that background, and we'll open it up for questions to keep the dialogue going. You know, I already have some questions for us, too. So without any further ado, Mr. William McCoy. Congratulations.
So, the elevator speech, right?
Uh-huh.
So, I'm a young guy from North Carolina, born and raised there. I moved to Michigan after I got out of the military. Did 5.5 years in the U.S. Army, 1 year in Iraq. Wayne State University for my bachelor's and master's. I was a little too old when I got out of the military to play basketball there, but I was a student assistant with Coach Greer for 3 years with the men's basketball program. Graduated from Wayne State thinking, man, I'm gonna go be a basketball coach and then eventually, hopefully an AD. and all that stuff kind of sped up for me after I graduated. Took a job here at Midtown with the charter school, and immediately after I got hired, the principal comes to me and said, "Hey, we need an athletic director." So I kind of leapfrogged from being a coach right into being an athletic director. Also, while I'm at Wayne State, I started officiating PAL football, Little League football out in the suburbs, and then high school football in the PSL, Oakland County, Macomb County. And by the time I graduated, I was fortunate enough to move up into Division II football in the GLIAC. So I did 7 years of Division II football as a football official in the GLIAC. I was fortunate enough to move up to the Missouri Valley, and now I'm in the Mid-American Conference, where I also I'm fortunate enough to do some Big Ten football here and there. So after I left the charter school here, took a job out in Romulus at Summit Academy. I was there for about 11 years, tried to turn that program around, and then I got the call saying, "Hey, would you be interested in possibly working at the MHSAA?" So that's me. A little bit of in between there. I worked for the NFL in the replay booth for a year. Worked on the sideline at Lions games for the NFL. So my life has kind of been sports, not necessarily on the playing field, but behind the scenes, and the facilitating of sports has been my career path.
As we get ready for questions, I think it's important to note that credibility for our community is important, particularly street cred. I think in the introduction, Will has clearly stated his credibility from top to bottom. I think it's important as you guys go out as ambassadors who can communicate, look, we talking to my man, he's experienced a whole lot, I think that's important, so we can kind of debunk some myths. So with that being said, any general questions, starting with Horatio, please.
Lindsay, I think you should want a rotation out of respect. Go with the coaches who've been coaching the longest.
Sure, okay.
Let them answer, then we get to the young guys.
Okay.
So they can see the history of what's been going on.
That's perfectly fine. We'll start with our Hall of Fame coach. If you have anything you want to put out here for us, any questions or comment?
Well, it's on the subject matter what we here for today. The biggest question that I have is, like I told you, I'm a product of what happens to a young kid who doesn't understand the ramifications about not being serious in high school as far as getting grades in order to go to college. And I'm caught in a time warp on a lot of things as far as what to do and how to do. When I say a time warp, I played in 1975. And I came up when the state first had the first playoff system, and we barely missed out on the so-called point system.
This was Osborne? You were at Osborne?
I was at Osborne. And I want you to know I'm a great alumni. We have some great alumni from Osborne in here. So with that being said, I didn't understand what the ramifications were about not getting grades to be able to go to college. So after football was over with, I fell by the wayside of some things, and I got lost about what my identity was supposed to be. And I ended up starting working at Christ. But I was good enough that another coach from another high school said, "Son, why you got in school?" And that was due to the fact, I'm not going to call him names, of a guy who didn't understand about a black kid having to go back to the neighborhood, do what he had to do in order to be himself. Well, it was easy for him because he was not about ethnicity. So he didn't understand what black people had to go through. So after a period of time, I found my niche into coaching. In 1979, I ended up coaching at Redford High School with a guy by the name of Bob Jones. Well, the rest is history. I've been coaching since 1979. But the one thing I still understand is this: they want us to evolve as coaches into what's going on in today's kids. But today's kids still have some of the same problems as yesterday's coaches. So now, upon the time war of not being able to do what I was taught in order to be a successful person as a citizen in society, but getting still, I have the same demeanor of what I was mentored to do and to be successful, because I didn't want to go back and be the same kind of coach that let me end up in the streets. So I said to say this: There are definitely some rule changes that have to be done to accommodate today's coaches, that's old-time coaches, that understand what a kid needs to be. Because I don't care what you say. Y'all philosophize and teach all the stuff you want to teach and talk about what y'all learned in college, but guess what? You got some knuckleheads that got to be dealt with a certain kind of way that only an old school coach can get and do and bring them out of the midst of being a number going to the script. So it's a whole lot that's being held hostage by us coaches that want to be here, that want to do something, that can do something, but can't do nothing because our hands are tied and held by certain rules.
Could you give an example, Pastor? But from a rule standpoint, would be something like what? How you address a kid, your proximity to a kid, being able to touch a kid, is it something like that?
All the above, I'm gonna tell you what I'm saying,
Okay.
All the above. Case in point. You sit here and we talk about what some kids need. But yet still, the old school way put a lot of kids off the street and into school. But the new school way say that we have to touch them mentally because these kids have problems at home.
Trauma.
And they bring the problems to school. Okay, I can understand that. Because as I say, I'm calling the time work on the thing because I have to evolve to understand exactly what you're saying. But I also want you to understand, you understand what I'm saying about when we get off hostage, about the same kids you talk to and goes back and terrorize the school, go back home and terrorize mama's home, go back to the community and terrorize the citizens in the streets. But yet still, everybody in the administration wants to bring the problem to the coach and have the coach solve the problem.
Okay, Coach, can we bring that down so we can let Coach get to it, and then we'll come back on it? So if you can summarize this now.
Well, in summarizing, the essence of what we are here to talk about, I think, is what is the best way to help our kids in order to be eligible to get ready to go to school? And what can the state do to help us, to help them? One of the things that's a catch-22, you access these kids ready for the clearinghouse and all that kind of stuff, but you also handcuff us talking about certain rules that is not applicable to what our kids are going through in Detroit. We don't have the resources in order to make these kids eligible as far as telling them what they're going to do, but then when they get there to a certain place and start acting out and doing the things they're doing, not because of social issues and psychological issues that you think. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Let's let them step into that now, Coach. Let's let them step into that. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I know what.
Well, how about we do, he's talking about, I took from that, the rules that limit a player or a coach to be able to address a player in a certain way, Coach?
To successfully help this kid get where he has to go.
Now, we're pretty much talking about the fire and brimstone coaching style. We probably still see that with a Tom Izzo type coaching style, very in your face, get your attention type coaching style. Is it fair to say that?
That's a fair statement, but it's also fair to say, look, I can tell you I'm calling the time warp. I'm not allowed to put my hands on kids. Let's get that perfectly clear. I know I'm not allowed to put my hands on kids because guess what? The same kid, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the hottest kids in NCAA right now is the kid that I coach and goes by the name of Sauce. Everybody talking about Sauce Gardner down in Cincinnati. Sauce Gardner had a whole lot of home issues that were going on. And I was always there to try to help address the issue as well as address the staff and team. Now, it got so bad that one day in practice, I couldn't put my hands on Sauce. I made him do some extra running, stadium stairs, and all that kind of stuff. But in order to get him to understand what my feelings were for him, I said, you had enough? He said, no, coach. I said, don't call me coach. I said, today I'm daddy. He said, huh? I said, I'm daddy. I said, call me daddy. He said, okay, coach. I said, run the stairs. When he got to running those stairs, he came back and said, okay, daddy. And the whole point of what I'm trying to get him to understand is, I'm more than just a coach to you, son. I'm more than the person that you can document to depend on to do what you got to do. Because you just believe I'm the same person you're going to call when you got any money away from college.
Coach, I want to stop you right there. We appreciate everything you've given us, and for the sake of Will being able to answer directly in this capacity, what I'll say is, can you talk about the evolution and why we're at a point where we have a certain rules that prohibit coaches from physically touching players, if that's fair to say, from coaches, quote unquote, not being receptive to the mental health aspect of what's going on. And Coach, I'll let you come back in on the back end. Is that fair to say, generally speaking?
Yeah, I'm not a mental health professional, so I don't want to wade into, all of that. All I can say is the MHSAA does not have rules that say what you can and can't do with certain students. That's a school district policy, right? So, I mean, obviously it's against the law to put your hands on anybody, but we don't have rules that say coaches can't do X, Y, and Z. We do have rules that talk about undue influence. We have rules that talk about ethical issues, codes of conduct, but as far as, the relationship between a coach and the kid, our language is very limited on that. So we don't really do a whole lot of restricting.
Can we stay on that and we'll get you? Can we address the common misnomers that people have about MHSA? You kind of touched on as far as what you're there to do. I remember Mr. Hampton saying years ago, but you probably have a different version of it. But what's a common misnomer that people have about MHSA that you can probably clarify?
The one biggest one at having breakfast with Horatio and Lindsay is that if a kid moves, that they're not eligible. And that's just not true. If a kid moves, that's the number one. There's 15 exceptions to the transfer rule. So the transfer rule basically says if you transfer schools, you're not eligible unless you meet one of these 15 exceptions. There's 15 of them. So if the MHSAA didn't want kids to be eligible, they wouldn't give 15 different reasons why you could transfer and be eligible. So I think that's the number one misnomer. The other thing that I think is alarming or could be an issue is if your student doesn't meet one of the 15 and they are considered ineligible, there are steps that you could take as a school, as a coach, to help that kid be eligible, but it's gonna take some work from the adults involved. And a lot of times what I've noticed is we don't wanna do that work, right? We don't wanna file the paperwork. Or if a kid, let's just say it's a hardship case with the kid and there's a extenuating circumstances as to why this kid needs to move and they don't fit one of the 15 exceptions, we can submit a waiver, or you can submit a waiver for that kid, but you have to have documentation, you have to have legitimate reasons why we feel like, or the executive committee would feel like it was a legitimate move from one place to the next, and it's not just athletically motivated.
I want to go back to you, and the work that you're doing is very unique. I don't know if we came up with a business idea right here, because I do understand a lot of parents are intimidated by the paperwork process, the appellate process, but maybe there are third parties that can look at this and say, well, tell me what's going on, and we have the ability
before
to
he answers
that.
The school is the people that need to submit the paperwork.
Okay.
The athletic director, the principals, the guidance counselors at the school, those are the people that need to work with the family, because those are the people that are going to submit the waiver to us. We don't take waivers from third-party people. It's got to come directly from the school.
I won't make you answer this, but I'll ask the coaches out here, do you see that something that happens a lot, that the schools are proactive in that process? Yay, day. This is not putting nobody on the spot, but what do you guys think? I'm seeing a little bit of head shaking, not up and down. Do you think that, do you feel, generally speaking, and I know you had a question, I want to come back to you too. Do you feel, generally speaking, Lakeith, and it's good to see you here, that from what Will just said, that it has to come from a school, that said athletic department is going to be proactive and say, hey, come on in, parent, we're going to work on going through this paperwork so we can submit this to MHSA. Do you think that's something that's very likely or unlikely?
I would say unlikely because a lot of times when you ask questions to some of these schools, athletic directors, they don't even know. And you'll get a different answer from two different athletic directors. I'll call up to the MHSAA and ask a question, they'll say, go to the athletic director, but half the time they don't know. I had somebody just recently put together a camp, his athletic director, it was a camp for middle school kids. He picked a date, his athletic director said, you're good, you can do this camp. And then later found out 2 days before his actual clinic was supposed to start that he had to wait until the start of the weekend that official practice start, which is tomorrow, because he's a high school coach. So that's something I feel like, why didn't the athletic director know that? He had the wrong information. And so I think that athletic directors need more training on a consistent basis of the rules and what they are, so that they can give people the proper information. Because I will just tell you, I know more than half the athletic directors that I talk to.
So
I'm
let me
parent.
Please, Coach, I got you.
So I think I know I have one of the possible reasons why that is the case. I was one of those athletic directors in the city that was a part-time athletic director, right? So I was at a charter school, and they weren't willing to put the resources into it. They didn't think it was important enough to say, I need somebody that's full-time doing this job, because I was a PE teacher, and they gave me one planning period. And that planning period was I would run to the Sam's Club if we had a basketball game. Now I'm supposed to be planning for my actual class, but I'm running to Sam's Club, grabbing concession stand stuff for the game we had that night. And then the second year I was there, they told me I had to fundraise for my own stipend. That's when I resigned. I'm like, I'm not fundraising for my stipend. So I said all that.
They gave you a delayed fire in there.
So I said all that to say, I know that in the Detroit, and I've had this conversation with Jay, in Detroit public schools and most charter schools in the city, they don't have a full-time athletic. So they're telling people, hey, you're the English teacher, and oh, by the way, we're gonna give you a few $1,000s to be the athletic director. You get what you pay for. If you pay for a part-time person, you get part-time results. So that's the issue we're running into. And if I teach all day, so I got to be there 7 something in the morning, and the basketball game's not till 7 o'clock at night, you really not getting the best of that person if they have to do 3 or 4 jobs in the school. The last thing they worried about is this $3,000 stipend job. That to me, that's my career. This is one of the things I used to tell my coaches. This is my career. I'm a full-time athletic director. You come and coach, and you get $3,000 stipend. You don't want to follow the rules. You don't want to check physicals. You want to do this. You want to do that. I'm not going to lose my job. And if you get fired for your $3,000 stipend, you go back to Chrysler. You go back to wherever you're going. But I'm losing my career. To a lot of the schools in the city, that's not a career. That's a part-time job, and you get part-time results.
Well, but on one end, though, I'm asking about as a MHSAA, you have these athletic directors that fall under your tree. Where's the accountability for making sure they know the knowledge? I've never heard any of my friends who are ADs say they had to go to a meeting, right? That the MHSAA is to have us have this meeting to give us these rules to educate us to make us better as athletic directors. That's what I'm talking about. Where's the accountability? I was the AD in Highland Park, and we were under the OAA, white or red, whatever. Every Friday we had a meeting. Every single Friday. It wasn't a Friday that we didn't have a meeting. They held us accountable as a district, but I'm asking, where does the MHSAA hold us all accountable as athletic directors across the state?
So those are personnel issues. Like, we don't get into personnel issues. We implement the rules, and we run the tournament. So Detroit Public Schools, that's their issue. If they don't have people that are accountable, if they don't have people that show up to meetings, if they don't have people that, it's hard for us to tell Detroit Public Schools, your athletic directors have to do X, Y, and Z. We could put minimum standards in as far as, and we do, just to make sure you're clear, we do. We have AD in-service trainers that sometimes most people don't show up to.
Right.
But here's the problem. Let's just say we put in a bunch of different rules and said, if your athletic director doesn't show up for this, we're gonna do this. Who ended up getting punishment? The kids. So we can't, the punishment that we would put towards adults would end up trickling down to the kids. So they didn't have anything to do with them, with the adults not showing up.
Right, but don't they get punished anyway for having a person who doesn't know what they're doing?
I agree.
And so I look at the MHSA as this house, because in one place, you're this big housing unit that puts out these rules, but then at the bottom, it's like, well, you all have the autonomy to do what you please, but then when there's something, you all make a big decision based on what you all feel, based on people sending you information. So it's kind of like, wow, on one end, you give me all these rules, but you don't want to hold the people accountable, but then you make the last rule of whatever happens for a kid situation That's kind of crazy.
Okay, so let me explain something, just so everybody understands what the MHSA is. I think we should have started with that.
Well,
That's
yeah,
my fault.
We're
I'm telling jokes about cops smacking people, my bad.
every rule in the MHSA handbook comes from the schools. It doesn't come from us.
Repeat that.
Every rule in our handbook comes directly from schools.
and
So schools apply to be members of the MHSAA, and they say, we're going to, the only stipulation for being a member of the MHSAA is saying, I agree to abide by the rules. There's no money involved. We don't charge people to be members, right? There's a governing board made up of superintendents, athletic directors, principals, coaches. They're the boss. It's not me. There's 26 people that work in that building. Most people think it's 1,000 of us up there, and we making these rules, and that's not how it works. The governing board of the MHSAA decides what the rules are. We implement the rules. So I can have 1,000 opinions about what I think should happen. None of it's gonna get passed unless the governing board of the MHSAA says it is. And those are, again, superintendents, athletic directors, and principals.
Let's piggyback on what the young lady was talking about and exactly what you were talking about. We have a thing called cause and effect. Cause and effect is the so-called rule, right? The effect is, we've already spoken on that, and what she said. The immediate effect is a kid is penalized. Case in point, it's ironic that we're talking about this today because of what has happened to some of the kids down at King High School. We had a kid transferring from another school. Kids end up being passed as ineligible to play this year because of one of the so-called rules. But yet still, we played against a kid just this past couple weeks ago that transferred from King to another school and was under the same guidelines of what happened to the kid at King, but yet still, the cause and effect. Our kid get penalized. So now, you say the rules are based upon what the high school sent it to the state of Michigan. But I'm saying to you, at what point in time is somebody going to be an avenue in order to help change those rules that are ineffective and are hurting our kids? And that's the bottom line of why we're supposed to be here today. Trying to find a way to help not hurt our kids.
Well, let me just state this. The impetus of this was a meet and greet to get to know Will.
This is great. No, I want to
Okay,
answer this question.
okay.
I want to answer this question. Let me answer
It's
the
almost
first question.
fair, not these guys that got this slapped by the cops on the passenger seat. So I'm asking the question I'm supposed to ask, so I don't be left wondering why I got slapped.
So let's address how rules get changed, right? So there's a rule that we all agree that shouldn't be a rule. Whatever the rule is, the MHSAA has athletic committees. One committee that I'm the chair of is the equity committee. So if there's any rule that we feel like is inequitable towards kids, or anything that we feel like that we could change that would be a help to kids, whether it be LGBTQ, minorities, females, right? We put this committee together, we have a meeting, and we try to get at least two or three people from each zone of the state. There's 8 zones. Detroit is zone 3. So we had Anika McEvans from the Detroit Public School on there. We had the athletic director from Cass Tech, the young lady, Tanya Woodard, was on there. And we have a meeting, and we talk about issues. And if there's anything from the committee that we all feel like, hey, this is something that needs to change, the committee will make a recommendation to the representative council, which is the governing board, 19 people that we talked about. On that 19 people board, there's one seat that's guaranteed out of the whole state. Guess what seat that is? Detroit Public School.
And that's what I was gonna say, so my biggest
The only seat that's guaranteed is Detroit Public Schools. Every other person has to be elected. Detroit Public Schools automatically, whoever the executive director is, automatically on the board. So Detroit has representation on the representative council. So how do we get the rules changed? Come from committee, we sit down, we say, we need to, this rule needs to change. We send that recommendation to the rep council, which is a 19-member board, and that board decides whether we're going to change the rule or not.
So.
Yes, sir. Oh, go ahead.
Just a quick thing, because my biggest question before you even said that about PPS having one guaranteed spot was where's the representation of color for these governing people? And then the biggest question now is like, why do you think we have that one guaranteed person? Because there's no representation of color. And so a lot of times we are going to always fall back on the end because there's no representation for us as a whole. 1 out of 19 is nothing. 1 out of 19, yeah, I can speak, but that doesn't mean that people are going to vote the way we need to vote based on equity and inclusion, because at the end of the day, there's only one of us. You know what I mean? And that's the part that is hurting for any of us that are in urban communities. I've fortunately been a part of 2 different, suburban and urban. I see the differences in both. You know, I don't see suburban schools going through some of the things that I see my urban coaches going through, especially when it comes to whether it's the transfer rule. As a whole state, our travel rules they suck. We don't have state seating. Like, there are so many things that we are so far behind on, and those are my biggest issues. I've been doing this for 21 years, and we've been talking about travel rules for 21 years.
So what's your issue about travel rules?
Yeah.
So pretty much, you wonder why some of our best kids leave and go to different states, or they go to prep school. Well, it's simply because we believe that we don't have enough games. We only play 20 compared to some students who are already playing. Now, they come to us in Christmas tournament and have 10 games already. This will be our first, second game. So we only have 20 games. So then we also can't go farther than, what's the amount? 300, right?
Three state border football.
Right, so.
3 state borders.
So if we have a really good team, let's just say like a Grand Blanc, and Grand Blanc wanted to go down to Louisiana to play something, a tough tournament that has three games, and they play 3 different, and they get some states, statewide recognition for their kids. They can't go to Louisiana because our state says no. But why? It's just the same thing to me to the transfer rule. A kid only has 4 years to play any sport. They may not ever play a sport ever again in life. Who are we to take away when they play, who they play for, or where they play? Because they may not do it ever again. So to take away a whole year, let alone even when we have a half year. Other states, they get 2 games. They're eligible for 2 games, and they can go wherever they want to go. If a kid is a regular student and his mama moved 5 times, and she takes him to 5 different schools, nobody's going to say anything. But because a kid plays a sport and moves around, it's, oh no, you can't do that. Now I'm going to put this rule in place. So these are my things that say, if we're really about kids, why does it even matter where a kid goes as long as they're getting the opportunity to play? Because I've seen kids who are also follow the coach, right? And they didn't win a state title. And they're not going to win the state title because it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. You can have all the best kids and you still might not win a state title. Because you got refs, now you got to think about. You got people who don't hate. You got this all types of stuff. People get injured. And it just somebody might work harder than you. There's no really big, if you do this and all the kids know you're going to win. There's no guarantee. We see that in Kentucky basketball.
Let's let him respond. Come on.
So,
And I know you can't change all this. You just got there. I do. I'm just giving you
I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I want to change all of it. I as someone who's in education, who came through education, there's students first. So kids flying off to Louisiana to play basketball, missing school, so on and so forth. We all may think, this is hindering the kids. Is it? So
even in the summertime,
the misconception, I think there's a misconception that there's not enough competition locally, right? So let's talk about it. In basketball per se, you can play anybody in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Wisconsin. There's 2,500 high schools in those states. So you got Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee. You mean to tell me that you can't find nobody to play basketball against in Indiana, a hotbed of basketball? It's hard for me to believe that. It's hard for me to believe
I
that.
want to get
now,
Coach real quick. Okay,
now
let's
there's
come
there
back around over here.
there is push, to your point, to allow extended travel in the summer. There is push for that. There also is push for us to expand basketball from 20 to 22. So we may be 22 games. So there are some states that I believe are far too. So if you go to, I think it's Illinois, it's 31 games. New Jersey, 16. Right? So we're gonna fall somewhere in between, right? It all depends on what we as a state believe we should have. There are some rules that
Where do those beliefs come from? Like how do you say?
we just talked about. So the 19 people who decide what the rules are dictate how many basketball games you play. Now, if we want to change the makeup of those 19 people and what they look like, then that has to come from the schools. The schools have to say, hey, we don't feel like this represents minorities. This doesn't represent females. This doesn't whatever demographic we are. That has to change from us. It doesn't change in this room complaining about it.
Coach, I want to get some new voice on my way. Then we'll go back to you, Coach. Go ahead. Tell us your name again. Remind me.
Barbara Rushing, the one point I was going to make, I know for the past years with Cass and those staff since 2012, I have a number of college teammates that reside in Ohio. We struggled to find games inside the state. We looked at Ohio, we were basically told no one in Ohio is going to play based on their reputation and such. This year we had basically 2 open weeks with 4 pitchers. I'm trying to find games. And the one game I could find was St. Francis in Baltimore. But I was restricted from playing them even though they were long here. So right now, if I'm struggling to play the 5 teams that want to play us, and the fight, honestly, some of it is if Cass has to play smaller schools, they may not qualify for the playoffs.
Coach, may I ask you something in that too, as we look for these teams to match up with, Lakita, you kind of said it too. Is there something to be said about the caliber of team you want to play and what it does for your program? Let's say you can find a team within the border, but you know, they're not known for being a really tough team. They don't have that kind of street cred and reputation. There's something to be said, one, to find a team that's out of state that also has a great reputation to be a competitive team to help your program stand out?
Well, the biggest thing I'm looking for is Division I and Division II opponents, which is hard to find for us right now, quite honestly.
Teams that have players who have Division I or Division II.
No, he's talking about classification.
Okay.
Classification for points, because again, this year, we struggled to make the playoffs, just given some of the circumstances of points, and honestly, with the PSL, all schools are smaller. The other point I wanted to bring up too is, when you talk about transfers, you look at Renaissance, you look at us, we're in a unique situation because we're an attractive school. For people who move to state, particularly everything that's happening downtown, if you're gonna look at sending your child to Detroit Public Schools, Cass and Renaissance is probably the option. But now that you move and we don't have a district, you're restricted if your child plays sports to be eligible for that. So there have been a number of kids now that have gone to situations that aren't really ideal, maybe even socially for them, because of their student athletes. And I agree with her point that, you know, if you look at the educational standpoint, I moved my daughter last year because of racial issues happening in her school to put her right school. Now, being in the suburbs, she wasn't restricted for being a student at the other school. But now we're being more restricted to students, particularly when it comes to mental health. And I know a lot of parents who struggle with what their children are dealing with from a racial standpoint in some of our suburban school districts. And they would be better off, honestly, maybe in our school districts or other neighborhood school districts, but they're restricted based on their student athletes if they're not willing to move, right? So I think there's things that we need to progressively look at that's really hindering brown and black kids. This really what these rules are really doing, and in some instances, we kind of feel that may have been the order of why some of this was originated by some others. Not by the MSHA, but the ideology that it's going to restrict the city schools.
So let me give you an example of what I think may be the issue. Just stay with me. Some rules, right? People make rules, and they're not thinking about the kids in the city when they make the rule per se, right? They may be saying, well, we want to disadvantage those kids. Let's just say that's true. We're gonna make this rule because we don't want the kids in Detroit to flourish, right? There's always gonna be a flip side to that. So I got a phone call from the Muskegon NAACP chapter. They feel like the kids at a school in Muskegon were being targeted by race based on the fact that the school that they played, they were flying a Trump flag. Now, to me, I understand that because I'm African American.
Flying
Within the game, people in the stands had Trump flags. People had Trump shirts, right? So my initial thought is, well, dang, that's wrong. And then I'm like, well, why don't we have a rule that says no political stuff at games? Then I think about it, I'm like, well, whoa. Right, that's a slippery slope. Because once we start saying no political.
Black Lives Matter considered political.
Exactly. The minute we tell kids that no political stances, no political, that means kids can't kneel, because that's political. That means they can't wear Black Lives Matter shirts, that's political. My point is, we can put a bunch of rules in place, but you always have to understand what the ramifications of those rules are. And if you open the floodgates and you say kids can just transfer whenever they want, if they want to transfer 15 times they can, there's going to be some reckoning for that. There's going to be some reckoning for that. And there's no way for us to really be able to fathom all of the ripple effect of us just saying, we're going to let kids fly down to Louisiana to play basketball. Yes.
All right, you made a statement about, and this is dealing with the basketball situation. You said, you trying to tell me that all the states that you named off, that we could find enough competition in the city of Detroit as opposed to flying a kid all the way to Louisiana. And I say to you, you're not in the thick thing of what's going on. If that was the case, why would a place like IGM be called up into the city of Detroit trying to get our quarterback to transfer to IMG to so-called get better competition than what he's getting up here? And I tell anybody,
you can't compare. I'm not gonna sit here and let you compare a regular public school to IMG Academy. That's not even a fair comparison.
But no,
they don't have any of the
basketball team down to play IMG.
They don't have
any go down there in high school. They would, but there's
the same thing that he talked about with the and I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. The same thing you talked about with the school in Baltimore. What's the name of it? St. Francis. It's hard to compare a public school that's in the Detroit public school to those schools because, one, they don't have any restrictions. Cass Tech can tomorrow say, we don't want to be a part of the MHSA. They can do it. And they can go play St. Francis. They can go play IMG. Anybody in Detroit public schools will say, we don't want to be a part of the MHSAA. And you're free to go play anybody you want. Those schools don't have those restrictions because they're not a part of the state associations there.
Okay, maybe I missed the point.
Yes.
I thought we were trying to give y'all guidelines and rules, trying to help change the rules about what our limitations are or what we can do to help our kids get that. I might be wrong on what
but my point to you is, first we have to agree that that rule is disadvantaging your kids, and I don't happen to agree with that. So I'm telling you, if you want to change the rule, this is how you change the rule. We don't agree that that rule is disadvantaging your kids.
Okay, so who's our spokesperson outside of our voicing ourselves right now to a person who is a liaison between us and the MHSA to try to do what we're trying to get done? I mean, what's this forum all about then?
We just Jay Alexander has a seat on the board that governs all of this.
We're going to get, hold on.
And I'm sorry for being late, because I'm not kids. I got three kids. Middle ground. You know, this discussion.
Can you introduce yourself to the room? I know.
Lamont Stone. Those who don't know me. And I understand that aspect of not wanting our kids to travel because of missing school and missing other things. But why can't those teams come into the state where our kids aren't missing anything?
Your next coach.
That's the question. And that's where I would agree. That's where I would agree. That's where you have me sold, right? To me, and I've made this point, to me, if I was the guru and I could just wave a wand and change the rule, I would say anybody that wants to play cash in football from Baltimore or California or wherever, there's 2 weeks in the season before school even starts, right? The first 2 football games in the season, we're not even in school. So they're not missing any class, right? Let's just say we don't want them to travel. If anybody wants to come play for cash, they come week 1, week 2. That's my solution. If the teams from Louisiana want to come play Summit Academy in basketball, there's 2 weeks during the winter break. You can play whoever you want to play in those 2 weeks during the winter break.
Just want to be devil's advocate to the room. Is there some way we can challenge that? You want to have an issue with what he's saying with something like that?
Well, Lindsay, I think everybody, he's giving them some value. If Cass want a team from out of town to come and they get the rules changed, they want to be, they got 2 weeks.
And that's how you start.
That's how you start.
That's a solution. We can't just say,
Let's get Coach, go come around.
follow the rule and let everybody.
I want to respect Coach. He had his hand up. Go ahead, Coach. I'm coming to you guys, okay?
I've been holding this question so long.
Thank you.
It's almost out of place.
That's okay. That's okay.
But I started so long ago, man. Sports is completely different than it is now. Okay, now it's a business. Okay, even on the lowest level. Okay, and a lot of times people don't want to recognize that. Okay, people are making business moves. Okay, to go from little league all the way to the league. Okay, so dealing with kids now is completely different than it was 30 years ago. The sport has changed completely different 30 years ago. Refereeing has changed completely different. Okay, but I'm going around that to say this. Okay, and this is what I think will stop a lot of this that we're talking about in terms of athletes. I know there's some states down south that has a rule that where it's almost like a transfer portal. Everybody's entitled to one transfer. Okay? After the first transfer, again, that's when you gotta reach certain criteria to get a second, which is much harder to do. But why couldn't we consider that rule as simple as that? Every kid is entitled to one transfer. Okay? I think that would eliminate a lot of the nonsense that's going on now to get kids, okay, to come and play and that type of thing, or even people making decisions that it's more profitable for me to leave this school because they're struggling and transfer to this school because they give me my better opportunity to get the D1 scholarship. Do you think we could ever consider at least giving one transfer, no question asked?
I can't speak to those types of things. I can only tell you my personal opinion, right? And I can tell you what the rules are, and I can tell you how to change them. I don't know. I don't know if I could say yes if I think we'll ever get there. I thought Lamonte's point may have been good. That was my personal thinking, and he kind of opened the door for it. I wasn't going to give my personal opinion
So
about what I thought until he made that point.
And you may have stated already, Coach, I'm coming to you. I promise. 1, 2. What is the process of what Coach suggested to be able to be presented to MHSA, to be able to be aired out and discussed potentially annually or whatever it may be that, you know, for lack of better terms,
So what school are you in?
University.
So you probably don't know that falls under Detroit.
Yeah, so to answer this question, whoever your athletic director is, or if you're the coach, I receive emails from coaches all the time, right? There are coaches who are upset with the new strength of schedule playoff format. And I got pages and pages of emails from coaches saying, hey, I need you guys to really think about this, and this is how I would like it changed, and this is the reason why. If I get emails like that, I print those, and when we have our meeting for the football rules committee, I present them to the football rules committee and say, hey, this is the email I've received from Mr. So-and-so. These are the points that he is making. Should we consider changing it? Should we consider
the annual meeting, your annual football meeting?
Annual meeting.
So there's a chance that this information can be, warehoused, and there's an opportunity annually for it to be addressed.
The one thing I want to make sure we understand us getting in meetings like this, they're great for informational purposes. But if we just get out of here and we just talk to each other, we complain about the rules and this don't make sense, and the MHSAA, and we on social media bashing the MHSAA, nothing's gonna change.
You get bashed on social media?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a lunch with time, I'm a this, I'm a that, and that's okay. But, and I'm gonna make this point and I'm gonna go to Rod.
Okay, one, so come like that.
Before I got on social media, probably a few months ago, but before I was on social media, there was a coach on social media bashing the rule. So before, a few years ago, there used to be a rule that if you go to a camp in football, you couldn't wear a helmet, right? So all the other kids in the camp, if there was a certain drill where they required helmets, the Michigan kids would have to stand off to the side. Now, that makes no sense, right? But what did he do? Instead of saying, let me figure out how to get this rule changed, he went on social media and just started bashing the rule, right? And then, so I chime in. This is before I met the MHSA. I'm just an athletic director, but I just so happen to be on this rules committee to get it changed. I inbox him, I say, hey coach, I'm not gonna go back and forth with him on social media. I inbox him and say, hey coach, here's my phone number, call me. Let's talk about the rule and try to get it changed. You think he called me? No, he didn't call me. Because all he really wanted to do was get on social media and bash the rule. There's ways to get those things changed, but being on social media, bashing them, talking about it, and that's the main reason why when I had breakfast with Horatio, is he asked me to come do this, is because us sitting around talking about it is, and I trust me, I was an athletic director before I came to MHSA. I don't agree with all the rules. I probably shouldn't say that on here. I don't agree with all the rules. But there's a way to change them if there's enough support, if there's a concise argument for it. And again, I'll say this one last time, hopefully this is the last time. You have to consider all the ramifications. You can't just look at how this is gonna affect my kids at CADS, my kids at King, my kids at Renaissance. Any rule that we make, we can't say this rule is just for everybody else but CADS. It's gonna affect everybody. And if you present it to the board of 19, we can say there's not enough representation, but small schools in the UP have the same gripes. The MHSAA don't care about us. Rural schools with 300 kids in it, they say the same thing. These rules are disproportionately affecting us. We can't make a rule that's everybody's gonna love. It's not possible for us to make a rule or change a rule where everybody in the whole state is gonna be happy. It's not possible.
Let's get these coaches. 1, 2. I know you guys been waiting. Go ahead, please.
All right. One thing I
Coach, reintroduce yourself and get some more.
Fishing for over 25 years.
Thank you for your
So one of the things I hear, you kind of hit on, is things have changed.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is I remember at one time PSL had about 36 high schools. Catholic League almost had 50 high schools. And these kind of conversations where you had to go play a school at another state, you didn't have those conversations because you had enough in the state. So you didn't have, matter of fact, sometimes the city championship was bigger than the finals, okay? But see, all of that is gone now. So the problem is, all of that is gone, but the rules are still the same. But it can't be the same now because things have changed. Now we say, well, we can bring schools in here to play, which is good, but you're still under the guideline of 20 games a season. Therefore, if you brought 2 schools in and you played 2 games, you only have 18. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, Inkster had that one problem where I think they won in districts, but the next game would give them more games, so they wouldn't be able to play the regional. Inkster was another school that became independent, where they could play schools from other states, wherever they want to do. And I think also that's good. Another thing is social media. There used to be a time we don't know what's a good player in other states because we didn't have that opportunity to look at social media. Now, let's go back to schools like CAS, is where now you hear these big school athletes and you want to play them at.
you want that opportunity to play them because you heard so much about it, and it goes vice versa. So when you say rules, you have to change with the time. You can't have the rules apply, but those rules are obsolete now. And I think that's where the biggest argument is coming from, because every time we say something, we go back to the word rules. Well, that rule needs to change. And I'm gonna say this before I leave. We talking about rules, and we have selective rules. We only selective rules. But it was funny how last year we had a pandemic. But in football season, every school, regardless of their record, made playoffs. How we do that? We alternated the rule to accommodate what was going on. Okay, then we went back. Now we stand a point system. It's kind of hard for a D1 school to play at a lower level because of the point program. But with that said, I do know some schools that can enter the playoffs in football with a 5-4 record. But it goes back to the points. What's they count the teams they've been playing? So I'm saying all this to say that. I'm saying all that to say this, brother, is I get it, but when you start losing teams in you start losing schools in your city, your rules can't be the same when it was when everything was complete. Same way as officiating. You can't, it ain't the same. There used to be a time of officiating, you had at least 5 years of freshman JV before you even see varsity. Now we got guys coming around the match. Right there.
Let's let Will respond to that, and I'm coming here and here, okay? So go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Any rule that, there's a process to get rules changed. And again, I don't have the ability. There's 26 people in the office. We don't have the ability. If we all got together in our office and said, we agree, we think this rule should change. That don't mean it's gonna change.
So
the rules come from the governing bodies. We're just like a school with a school board. If the school board says these rules are going to stay the way they are, that's where they are. So the push has to be through the committees, through your athletic director, through your school systems, through your superintendents, because those are the people that make up the governing board. And if the governing board says this is what the rule is, then that's what the rule is.
But I'm gonna say, okay, but then I'm gonna say I don't agree with that. I'm gonna tell you why. 6 years ago, parents, no school administration, no nothing, parents said they want girls basketball played when boys basketball is played. That happened. Volleyball, yes, I had that. So that had nothing to do with the administration. That had to do with parents fighting.
There's a lawsuit.
It was.
Yeah,
So it wasn't the MHSA office in the office saying we're going to change the rule.
No, it was the people.
You're saying the people influence
the people. It's just like all of us saying, you know what? We want to be at that meeting when you have a rules meeting because we got a voice we need to be heard. Because the 19 people that's on the board is not hearing what we're talking about. They're doing what they see. And so I was using that.
I understand your point.
That's what I was about to say. Because when you pass them the information, they
Okay,
go,
we'll come to this table. Go ahead.
You pass them, sorry.
We're going to come to this table, and I want to respect people who've been waiting for a long time. So we're going 1, 2, 3. So it'd be, go ahead, Coach. Remind us who you are again so everybody knows.
I go back to the key, this whole point from the beginning of this. First of all, as athletic directors, they are part-time, so they don't put in the work that they should put in. There are associations that they can get at their own expense, or maybe the school pays for it. But that goes right back to the school. These principals ain't putting in the time that they need to put in. I had a meeting with my agent, young agent, but it's an example of what I'm saying. So we're getting ready for these shot clocks coming in. And I asked my agent, do you agree with the shot clock? Oh yeah, but no, I don't want them. Why don't you want them? Because of the cost. Now, my point though is, the feds just dropped a whole bunch of money at every one of these school districts.
COVID money.
A whole bunch of money. And they can do what they want with it. And you're going to tell me, you're going to have athletic directors saying, no, we don't, and principals saying, and superintendents saying, oh no, we don't want shot clocks because it's going to cost us more money, we can't afford it. That's what's going to happen. Now we're going to get them, but you're lot of schools mad and upset, and that's my point I'm making. We soldiers. The lieutenants, they're not doing their jobs. That's my point. We're soldiers. We're doing our job. It's lieutenants up there who aren't making enough noise. Hey, let all the superintendents in Wayne County, Oakland County, McCoy County sue them. And go to court, do the same thing. Do the same thing that Patrick did. That's all those are options that we have. But our lieutenants are not doing it.
Let me make a point. I'm agreeing with you, just so you know. It may not seem like it when I say this, but I'm agreeing with you. So there's a rule that says that in the summer, you can't use school transportation to take your team to 707 and blah, blah, blah. Where do you think that rule came from? Who you think was the push behind that rule? Superintendents. Why do you think they didn't want transportation this summer?
Who's gonna raise the money to go to Louisiana? Who, you think they're gonna give us the money to take our team to Louisiana? That ain't happening, but we know that.
But that's an example.
No, I don't understand.
But there are people who have money to want to do.
Right.
Just to go back to that whole playing the whole competition thing. Clearly, there are coaches that aren't even willing to play certain teams.
Right.
Okay, that's the bottom line right there. You say it's people here, we can play here. Everybody don't want to play a cast.
Right.
Everybody ain't gonna play. You know how hard it is? My son goes to Hampshire High School. It took us a whole last or first part of the fall to complete our schedule because nobody wants to play us. That's not your fault, right? But you're saying, oh, it's enough competition. Well, sort of, and if it is, they don't want to play, so what am I supposed to do? Play at school, I'm going to beat by 40?
Is this basketball?
I'm talking about basketball right now. But
This is my point. All I'm saying is that, let's say they let us do it. Let's say the rule was there where we could go wherever we wanted. There's probably 2 schools in here who probably, and they're probably not even can do it. Where they would say, all right, we're going to drop 10,000 and send our whole football program in cheerleaders, in bands.
He's shaking his head. Look at that. He's shaking his head.
They don't let the football team go down to Florida for 3 days, but you're not sending the cheerleaders, and you're not going to send the band. Oh, no, all that's going to break loose. You're going to have every type of person, hey, you're not going fair to the girls. You're not going fair to the musicians. So we're going to spend $20,000 to send cash the football team alone, and think that's going to go the way we want it to go. Oh, no, it's not, especially here.
This is what we're gonna do.
Because mama going to see that baby cheering down in Florida, too.
I want to make sure, real quick.
The answer to all this right now in the media is let's fight together to allow
Right.
Okay, hold on for a second, really quick. I want to get a few more people. I definitely want to get Coach Tatiana. One more thing I want to say. We got some time. Will has a bunch of business cards in his pocket. He give them out like candy. So let's make sure you take advantage of being here and his accessibility. So I'll get Coach to go, and we'll get Tatiana.
You know, it's a amazing thing. I want to thank you again for you. I will dialogue does. Mr. Langton made a point, and I said earlier, I'm calling it's time to work on a lot of stuff. So I played in 75, and I'm still here today. So a lot of things that happened in 75 and what he said as far as the rules not being changed are the same rules that are being applied today. It's amazing about dialogue. The young man behind me was talking about money. We have a young coach at King High School who's so dynamic as far as what he wants to do to advance the program, past what it's been. He just got a meeting last week with trying to explain why we taking so much money to do what we do for the football team, only to have the cheerleaders talk about Title IX all of a sudden. So how does Title IX come into effect on money we raise to do what we want to do with the football team? Rules. You're going rules again. So the whole point of what I'm trying to say is this. Is so much rhetoric as far as he say, she said, and the back behind politics and what goes on in everything that life is based upon is unreal. You say, come to the front door, they slam the back door. Now, we're talking about something that relates to helping me, once again, it's the kids that getting penalized. Bottom line is, help me
help our kids. Give me a better understanding of what the rules of the game is so I can play the game. And at the same time, once again, it takes platforms like this, what Horatio is doing, to help us. Now, I want everybody to understand this. This gentleman talking about he's at the charter school, but he's been in Detroit public school system for a long time. Blake Wilkins is Detroit public school system. He has done nothing but trying to help kids for umpteen years and been penalized for a whole lot of stuff they never been penalized for. And I'm gonna go on record and say this. It took some great people to take time out of their schedule to come to this forum that Horatio is building. It took some great people to try to come and give some answers to questions that have been asked for 20-some years, 30-some years. But at the same time, I appreciate you, young fella. My voice get loud because I'm a coach. My voice get loud because I'm passionate. You make a statement about we can leave the MHSA, but guess what? It's some folks that still love Detroit. It's still some folks that love PSL. I don't care what the title is or where they're at. That woman right there cares more about public school than what's going on with anybody I know. I follow her all every winter in basketball and tournaments this year. I've been with her. Horatio was trying to help the system out, only respect and faith. He come to me and said, come help me out, I'm coming. The whole point of the matter is, anybody in here is about helping kids.
Let me ask this for the sake of historical purpose. And this is not a knock on Mr. Hampton in this role, but can we agree this has been the first time that there's been this open accessibility to someone at this level of MHSA? Is it fair to say, okay, I just want to get that for the record. And appreciate that. Tatiana Grant, how you doing, love? What do you want to share?
So question, part of the reason why I'm here is because my company represents various districts. So you got to meet in Lansing with one of my clients this week. Prior to that, I said to the CEO, I said, look, I do not want to hear any more excuses. You're the CEO, your AD slipped, this is not the first time, I've had your contract for 5 years. We've been dealing with issues over and over and over and over. So my question to you is now I'm stepping in like, look, you got to pay us, I'm gonna learn all the rules myself. And you, me, CEO, we're gonna figure this out. No school, your personnel that you're talking about, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So my question to you is, do these rules change season to season? How frequently is it updated? Where do I get these resources that, people are talking about? How do we know when this has changed and that has changed and things of that sort? Because I'm about to study this myself. So I don't have to be on the writing letters to you. I'm dealing with TV stations, newspapers, all of the trickle-down effect that comes out of these same rules that we're talking about. So is it just going to the website? Do you guys post bulletins when the rules are changed? Things of that sort.
So our handbook is accessible to athletic directors, superintendents, principals. So they have an account on our website. Once they log in, they have access to a few things that we don't publish to the public.
Okay.
So they would need to, whoever's, I'm sure I know what school you're talking about. Whoever's in charge of that school would need to add you or someone from your agency as a point of contact or administrator for the school.
It's a portal?
It's just our website, MHSA, but you would have to have an account to be able to go in and access the information.
Okay. We'll go right here, Coach. We'll go right here. Go ahead.
Okay, this is real quick.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I don't have a clue or answer to this. It's just a suggestion. But is there some way that you could kind of help football coaches out? Meaning, during the summer break, principals, ADs, for the most part, they go on summer break. They've been in school all year long, okay? And I think every football coach you talk to will verify this, that we pretty much on our own, okay, going into the season, okay? And then all of a sudden, first game come around, all hell breaks loose, okay? And it's almost like we're an scapegoat, okay, or a sacrificial lamb for the rest of the school year, because it's like the ground has been laid, okay, now you see what happened to the football. But there is no assistance for us during July and all because everybody's on the beach. Yeah. Okay? And they leave it up to us to make a decision, but then come right behind us and
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. All I can tell you is, when I was an AD, right, and I think it was 2 weeks after the school year was over, I could leave and I could come back August 1st. And there was no way in the world I would leave middle way through June and don't come back to August 1st for the exact reason you made. How can you operate that way? How can you work? How can you run the athletic department if you're off almost 2 months in the summertime? It's impossible. So I don't have an answer for you other than to go back to what we talked about earlier. A lot of the schools in the cities, a lot of the urban schools don't have full-time athletic directors. They don't invest in it. They don't pay. I don't know if they don't have the money to do it. I'm sure it's a financial thing. They have Jay Alexander and the people in his office, and then they have what are called coordinators at each school. And then the coordinators are the person in the building. But I would voice whatever your concerns are, whatever the question you have for me and there's a concern, I would say start at the building level with your athletic director. If you're not getting the answer you want from them, go to Jay Alexander and say, hey, Jay, or go to your CEO. You should be able to have a relationship with the person at the top where you can say, hey, CEO so-and-so, this is an issue, and we need your help.
Let me say this, guys, for the sake of time. The last voice you're going to hear after will be Horatio. He has some comments he wants to make, so we're going to make time for that. I'm going to get to you guys, too. But in a way of summarizing what we have, Will has come in, he talks about accessibility. Everybody has his number and his contact right in front of you. He talks about that, so we got accessibility. He also talked about the protocol does not go directly to MHSA. It's all local, like all politics is local. So you got to work within your systems, and he also kind of, whether he did it directly or indirectly, gave you a clue that if your administration is not responding, you document that to show that you're taking the necessary steps. And lastly, I want to say, he talks about these annual meetings. What he suggests are taken into consideration. And then these changes will not be specific for a region. They have to be statewide because rural issues are different than urban issues. So I want to make sure that when we walk out of here, we say, you know what? He was clear on these points and made these points. I'm going to go right to this table right here. Go 1, 2, and Lakita as well. Go ahead. He is. Okay.
The one thing, great point. And then the other thing is, I've been back in the high school level for 5 years, so I'm learning, and each year I'm learning something. And what I've gathered over the last 5 years, and both these young men have touched on it, is it's the administration. So once we get done with our coaching, let's become principals, let's become athletic directors, let's become superintendents. My football coach, everybody look at me as a basketball guy, I played football. My football coach was my 5th grade math teacher. He became my principal. He became my superintendent. He went from a teacher to principal to superintendent. We don't have that going on. We complain about the rules, but we don't have athletic minds making those rules.
In college, you hear about whether a university has a pro-athletic president or not. We saw that with UNLV and TARC. So he's making a good point that we got to take this knowledge to the next level so we can be those administrators that can make those kind of responses. We'll go here and go to the kid.
First, Will, it's a pleasure for you to come out here. Y'all look around in this room. It's coaches that coach me. I'm paid these brothers that ref me. And, just as a group, it's very rare that you get all black men in the room. One thing that we have to start doing is being organized. Just sitting here, he's not the answer, but this is the first thing. So first, this is just a meet and greet to get to know him. The second half is to hear about y'all frustration on here with coaches. How can we get help? And I think that's the 2 to 4 with the mental health and being able to help you all. One thing I can say is, for the next thing, us as a group, we should find 4 or 5 categories, talk about them, and get presented. So therefore, it can be organized. One thing I realized is being back, we got a lot of emotion and fucking passion, which is great. Now we got to be able to put a process in place. So just like I said, it's a pleasure. These guys, like I said, these 20, 30 years. I'm only 39, and I've been touched by everybody in this room. And I'm coming back and being an advocate, for athletes. So this Q&A, I think it was more so put a name in the face someone that we can go to with our deal. But the second half is, I've been going out to schools talking about how athletes need an athletic counselor, somebody to talk to. You know, when you think about sports is an outlet. I grew up in a crack house, single parent mom, putting dope in the dope packs at 7. Those are my stressors. Football is my outlet. You know, from PAL, high school, college. Then I don't play no more, so my stressors show up at 21, 22. It becomes my reality. So therefore, it happened to me at 22, had a breakdown at 30, but when that young kid stopped at 12, those stressors follow. So from the mental health to help you all out, y'all should be focused on coaching. It should be something that kid should be able to talk to about their issues. It's one thing to have experience of an athlete without the credentials. It's another thing to have a credential without the experience of our inner city athlete. When you got a ball, that's when you can drive change. And to y'all point, the frustrating part is here. We hitting him, but it's the administrator. To your point, we see online how much money every school they got. You know, they categorize as social emotional learning. The funds is endless. So all the frustration that y'all have, I'm gonna have y'all on my hip, and we're gonna go to the principal and say, why can't we have fun to help? So that passion, I'm gonna go to King, Cass, every school, already went to Central. They already on board. And we need to address the decision makers. Instead of looking up, down, we gotta go down, up, organize, having one voice to drive change. So, like I say, it's always a pleasure to come back home, to have somebody to talk to, the passion. Like, I love all y'all because if it weren't for y'all, it wouldn't be. And to look around and see these faces and the power that's in this room, once we get a little organized and take the structure and the process, then we're gonna drive change. You know, so I don't want to be long.
No, that's perfect. Actually, I want to take something from that point as I get Lakita up and then we get you. And I want to prep this question for you to think about before Horatio wraps us up. You talked about the SEL, the social-emotional learning, and Will, this is the question you can get ready for. How do we tie in the whole athlete identity foreclosure, dealing with the mental health piece, which we're going to talk about in the next 2 hours if you guys want to stay here. We're going to have some other individuals talk about it with the roundtable. But we talk about old school to now, you know, you can't get up in a kid's face without them crumbling, but that's how we would coach. We were like fire and brimstone. I became a coach like that. So I want to be able to address what is MHSA doing on promoting as it relates to mental health going forward, and I'll let you think about that. And I'll go to Lakita, we'll get you, and then we'll get last 3 questions, we'll finish with the ratio, but I just want you to be ready for that. Go ahead.
So I do want to say thank you for coming, we appreciate it. I personally know Nate Hampton and have a relationship with him. However, I don't ever think I've seen Nate in the city. But my question to you, okay, so you took this
Or
job.
wear some retro J's too, huh?
Huh?
So Nate won't wear no retro J's like Will.
Right. Okay, right. So you before you took this position, you mentioned some stuff about how you saw people on social media, and you have, conversations with people, and you understand really what this room is shouting out, right? You understand that. So in your role, what are your plans, or how are you going to help us or help Michigan, right? Because you see all these things that no matter who has a problem, whether it's suburban or whether it's urban. What did you think about before taking this position to say that I'm going to make sure I do these things? Or what power do you have other than just being the person that kind of gets all this thrown at them and then have to give it to somebody else? Like, do you have a specific thing that you can actually do for us, or is everything going to always be turned over to the powers that be?
That's a good question. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that question right now. I'm so new in the role. I'll give you this example, right? So when I took over, they said, you're in charge of football, right? Every step, there's people, no, we're going to do it this way. No, we're going to do it that way. Okay, I thought I was in charge of football. Right?
Yeah.
So I can't answer that question right now because I'm not sure. What I can tell you is this, though, and I hope you guys understand. We have people talking about their backgrounds. So I'm gonna give you a little bit about my background. My mom and dad were both middle school educated. I'm from North Carolina, rural North Carolina, poor North Carolina, food stamp North Carolina. Mom, I barely graduated from high school. Single mom, me and my brother. Freshman year of high school, failed off the basketball team, didn't have good grades. Didn't have a dad, had a scholarship offer, a D2 scholarship offer to Elizabeth City State University. Didn't have a dad to guide me and say, you're gonna take this basketball scholarship. I'm dumb enough to think I'm gonna walk on at North Carolina A&T. I'm only 6'2". I probably should have went the D2 route. So I talk to kids all the time about how I have a master's degree, but I hated school the whole way through it. So I relate to kids. I relate to all the Detroit public school kids, even though I'm not from Detroit. I relate to all of the minority kids in the sense that I didn't have. I understand their plight. I am those kids. So that's what I bring to MHSA. I bring someone that understands. Now, do I necessarily agree all the time with the narratives that are out there? I don't, because I've been in education long enough to understand the other side of it. But I came into the role feeling like, man, I don't understand this. I don't understand this transfer. I don't understand this. I don't understand it. And now that I'm there, I understand a little bit better. Not that I necessarily agree, but I understand a little bit more. So I said all that to say, I don't know exactly what my role is in necessarily being the person that's going to change everything, because I don't know if I agree that all of it needs to change. So, but I will always be the person that'll come. If Horatio has me here, I'll come and listen. I'll always be the person that'll come, do whatever I can to help, because I am those kids. And I said that if they interviewed me when I got the new job, and it's in the newspaper, you can read it. I said my focus is inner city kids, Detroit public school. I didn't go to Detroit public school. I'm not a Detroit product. But I understand that the entire state of Michigan is better when Detroit is better.
So let me say this, before we get to your question, we talk about, we're gonna get you to, we talk about credibility and how important that is. And if you guys are willing, before we get out of here, I'd love to get a group picture that you guys can have and get access to. But when you guys are out, and people start talking about MHSA, particularly Will McCoy, you don't gotta be like, you don't gotta jump in front of a bullet for him, but I think it's fair for credibility's sake that you say, I went to a meeting with that guy, he's pretty accessible, and at least be able to be a buffer to give somebody a chance. I'm not telling you gotta love him, I'm not saying you gotta do all that, but I think we owe that to him and Horatio to say, you know what? Hey man, we met with him, we talked to him, he's accessible, give him a chance. How about that? How about that?
And when we cut this thing off, I'll give y'all my cell number. I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah, all right. You can text us all night. We get that. Go ahead.
Yes.
Got you, Coach. Go ahead.
I have a comment, not a question. First of all, I commend everyone for coming and acknowledge the great passion and great men that are in this room. A lot of coaches that over my 35 years of being an official that I have great respect for, an official that I have great respect for, Keita, Horatio. But my comment, and the passion in the room is fantastic. But my comment is that I also, by being an official and by being an assignment, I've been able to cross paths with Will McCoy for probably the last 10 years or so. So he's not really new to me. And I want to say that him being here is a lot of pinata, so to speak, is very commendable on his part. And this man just got appointed this position, just took this position only a few months ago. So his learning curve is he still has a great learning curve. But for him to be here with us right now is very admirable. And I'm sure that as he matures into his new role, that he will be able to even address us with more wealth of knowledge and have more impact
and she understands all the ins and outs. And in his position, none of us have ever gone to a new job and in 2 or 3 months have mastered that position. Right? Even what he's done as a credit for this, he was identified as Black excellence. Okay, he was identified as a candidate that we want to have. There's a reason that he's there. They chose him for certain reasons. They targeted this man. Let's give him a chance to do what he needs to do. I want to say one more thing. Kid, you mentioned about Nate not being seen in the city. That's
no, I just said I know it's right.
He don't want to be seen. But Nate was there. Nate comes to the championships, but Nate sits with Nate on a high school. Nate comes and identifies officials, and he'll tell us, who's that? Who's this? Who's that? What you might not see is other people from Lansing coming into the PSL championships, the PSL playoffs, the Catholic League championships, and identifying teams and officials and so forth like that. But Nate is a very,
oh no, I know.
well, you know Nate.
Yeah.
They don't want to stop.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure that now Will is in that role. Will's going to find the role for him, the way that he's going to perform in that capacity. That's just my comment.
Nate was a great advocate for Coach Mills for a long time in the team high school. So what you're saying is something, like I say, I'm called to be because I've been around for a long time. And I've seen Nate, when it came time for teams to go to the state playoffs, to do some of the things behind the scenes that a lot of
Can I make a point? And I'm going to push back on some things a little bit here. Now, I appreciate all the kind words, but I want to make sure you all understand one thing. Malcolm can attest to this. So I've been in a few of the on a few of the committees prior to taking the position in Lansing, where I can have had the ability to recommend people for state finals and officials for this, people for that, da 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 da. And what I found quite often is we as a community talk, but we don't necessarily do all the time. I'm just being honest. So here's an example of that, and I'm not gonna use no names. I was in the job maybe a week. Got a phone call from 2 prominent people in the city about having an all-black football officials crew for the state finals. Now, I was just fortunate enough to be a part of the first all-black Division I football officiating crew that did University of Michigan versus University of Minnesota last year at Minnesota. So I have a letter from Commissioner Warren of the Big Ten, blah, 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 blah. So they called me, they said, hey, Will, we want to do this. We want to do this in Michigan. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Yeah, Nate was there, Nate didn't want to do it. And I'm wise enough to know that if Nate didn't want to do it, probably a good reason why. I talk to Nate probably 3 times a week, right? I'm not dumb. I understand what he was and how important he was and how much knowledge this man has and how much he cared, right? So I take the phone call, I say, you know what? Yeah, I think this might be something we could do. Fast forward, we start looking at the numbers. How many, you got 7 officials on the field, right? 8 games, that's 56 people. And we want to try to have a pipeline. So we start running the numbers. We need this many people on this game, that many people on that game, boom, boom, boom. I call them back, I say, hey, I don't know if it'll work this year, but we got to get our numbers up as far as registered officials, blah, 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 blah. So then, fast forward, I'm gonna be brief, fast forward, deadline to recommend officials for the state finals. We give them a list, you can recommend 100 people. The same person that called me, you think they did a recommendation?
Point well
couldn't
taken.
wait. I couldn't wait to call him back
Point well
and
taken.
say, hey man, you didn't even do the recommendation. Oh, so and so did it. So and so don't work in the city. So and so ain't gonna recommend 100 black officials. So I said all that to say, we can talk in these meetings. All this stuff sounds good. Yeah, let's send Cass to Louisiana for football. It all sounds great. But we gotta make sure we understand everything that goes along with it. And don't just think people are sitting in the room figuring out ways to try to hold kids from the city back, because it's not true. I can honestly say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and I can honestly say the new executive director at MHSAA is Mark Buell. He took over in 2018, and there's a big difference. The guy who was before him was great, right? But I can honestly say he came to Detroit. Jay Alexander asked him to come speak to the athletic directors a few months ago. He came. I don't know if that was ever done before. Horatio called me, I'm here. Nate lives in the city. I don't know if y'all know that. So Nate is from Detroit. He graduated from Eastern High School. So he is a Detroiter. So he made, like Malcolm said, when he comes to games, he'll pay. I talked to him. He ain't even flashing a badge and trying to get in for free when he comes to games. He don't even want y'all to know he's there. So I just wanted to say that as the last thing before
So let me do that. I do want to expect that there were some other questions, but for the sake of time, because Horatio got it going on, there's another huge event that you guys are welcome to be a part of. I want to get, whether it's a question or a quick answer from you guys, from Dre. Horatio's going to address us. I want, if you're interested, get a great group picture that you can send out to people, but also say in summary, he's saying, look, I want to help you, but we got to help ourselves and handle our business. We got to follow through. We got to do the proper protocol. If you're not capable, get somebody who can do it. So go ahead, and Dre and H, and we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
The only thing I was gonna say in the off season, when you were saying like, when off season, ADs go where they want to go. I'm surprised, like in officiating, there's a mandatory deadline when you must officiate, you must register. One thing I do want to say, as a head coach, got a lot of responsibilities. But as a head coach, I think, and it's just me, I think assistant coaches should be mandatory to take the rules test as well. Because a lot of times out on the field, we know the rule changes, but the coaches and the assistant coaches don't know the rule changes.
So you're talking specific football rules.
I'm talking football. I'm actually rules in general, but let's say with football, because football there's always a lot of rule changes, especially with uniforms. And when a lot of times, and I always say, when a kid come out in his uniform and right, to me, that's the coach, not the kid. Because, and then when the coach would say, either the talking to the kids or the assistant coaches say, well, we didn't know that. That kind of put us in a bad situation because we don't want to be the uniform, inspector out there. But it just shows that the miscommunication and the obligation that the assistant coaches should have to help out the head coach. That's all I have to say.
Greg, you want to respond to that? Hold on for the sake of time. Hold on.
No, I
We better get Dre too. We got to go ahead.
No, I agree. So, but again, and this may not be a good answer, but there are people in our office who would like to be a little bit more stringent on who's required to do what. But again, if you make rules, then you have to figure out, okay, what's the punishment for that? And then if you implement punishments to adults, the trickle-down effect is always going to be the key. So we try not to. Because let's just say, for instance, Lamonte has 5 assistant coaches. And Lamonte takes a rules meeting and 3 or 4 of his assistant coaches don't. We say, if you don't coach, if you didn't take the rules meeting, then you can't coach. That's going to put Lamonte in a very bad situation. And eventually, it'll catch on, right?
But I say no on that, because that's just like telling the referee the same thing. Hey man, listen, the head coach will actually, to me, it's almost, he's telling his assistants, if you do not take this test, you cannot be my assistant coach, which actually, to me, is putting coaches and actually taking it off the officials. That's just me. Because I know because a head coach get assistants to assist him. So whatever the head coach don't know, there's always an assistant coach. It's kind of knowledge him and saying, hey, but if the head coach is mandatory to take the test, but the assistant coaches can't, he got so much going on in his head, the assistant coaches, a lot of times a head coach get in trouble because of the assistant coach. So that's what.
Yeah, and the other part of that is assistant coaches are required to take it. Correct. They are required to take it. But the problem is, yes, it is. But here's the thing. Here's the issue with it. Here's the issue with it. When I was at Summer, and this is kind of how the sausage is made. It's not all that, but you can put all your coaches in the system, and then the AD can see if the assistant coach took the rules. I used to put, but that's extra work. The other option is I can attest. I can say, yep, Lamonte took his, Rod took his, Malcolm took his. They were all in the room together. They watched it together. I attest that they took it. And that's what 90% of athletic directors do. So the coaches are required to take the rules meeting, but they're not required to be put into the system. Gotcha. They're not required to be put in the system. So the athletic director has to ensure that they took it. And is that happening?
Okay, what we do, we get Dre, and the last voice will be Mr. Horatio Williams. Dre, what's good, baby?
First of all, I say thank you. Just on behalf of the schools, we have an active association, right? But it's kind of a vote, when we get one vote, correct, throughout the state, and that hurts. When we got 16 schools. We got 16 schools, we get one vote. So whenever people want rule changes and things to help us out in terms of what we think is right and whatnot, we only had that one vote. That's the other thing, the 16 schools. 19. So, like this playoff system. The games in our board of directors meeting with the this high school football association, how far is it? Because I knew where it was coming from. Everybody tried to talk about it, and all they didn't know what the reason it was. It wasn't until 2016 when they came up with this new playoffs, started developing the new playoff system. And I tell everybody, it was right after Cass and King was in the same year. That's where the rules started changing. And it directly affected the schools in Detroit. It didn't affect everybody. Because we don't only district, we do not play all Class A schools, or Class B, or Class C. We play everybody. Like King came up, they got to play Northwestern. I'm a Division 6, they Division 3. We should play each other. Because they hurt King with coming points. You know what I'm saying? So when they come to that kind of stuff, we'll get one vote. So as a collective body in Detroit, what can we do?
Yeah,
To stress
That's kind of the point she was making as well. I would say, I would try to be more influential in the coaches association. No, I'm just saying, as a collective, I would try to be more boisterous, have more attendance at meetings. And I don't know if you are. You guys may be very, very active in it. But I would try to be a little bit more boisterous in that. And then Jay, I would say, and I talk to Jay quite often too. And my experience with Jay is he's not afraid to voice his opinion. So if he feels like there's something that's not advantageous for Detroit public schools, he'll voice his opinion.
No, I agree with you. You said that's still wrong.
We talked about that before you came in. In order for that to change, that's going to be something that's going to have to change.
Or DPS can say, Cass and King, you're going to play your own schedule. You don't have to play anybody in the PSA. They can do that.
Okay. With that being said, let's give a formal thank you to Mr. Will McCoy. Introduce yourself to everyone.
Sorry, my name is William Blackwell, and I represent Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We got all these coaches in here, and I'm just, for those who don't know, I'm from Holland Park. My heart has always been in the city, and I do things in the city, although I may work in the suburban
always been able to give back. So when Horatio talked about, this event he's putting on, this event, my partner and I, Tim Ward, who's actually the area director, we want to be a part of the solution. So what we do as far as we support coaches and athletes. So before you all leave, stop by us. We'd like to share a card with you. But just my heartbeat is with you guys. Being a former athletic director, Nate Hampton was my athletic director, and I did 14 years, so I hear the compassion, I understand what is needed. So again, I just wanted to introduce myself and just the love, like Javon said, that's one of my guys who I mentored. And the love is rich, deep, and we're here to be a part of the solution.
Appreciate you. Thank you. So with that, just know that there's another event butting up against this. Rachel's doing some great things. We're going to have a mental health roundtable. You are more than welcome to stay. For housekeeping purposes, we'll have Horatio address us. We can do this photo op with Will. You guys can take a brief break as we prepare for the next event. But I just want to thank you guys formally for being out here, being in the trenches, and what you're doing. So with that, let's give both Will McCoy a hand and welcome Horatio Williams.
First of all the latecomers that came, I want y'all to stand up and introduce yourself. All latecomers, bro.
I'm Nikita Getz. I actually work for the Horatio Williams Foundation with Horatio, but I've done a lot of stuff over the last 21 years, but I advocate for kids first.
Rob Lacker, officiating over 25 years, have the pleasure to serve 5 state championships. So pretty blessed with that. And I like to see stuff like this. It's because the information that I get, I'm just going to carry on. So I'm glad we're doing something like this.
Greg Williams, basketball official, 20 years.
Tim? Yeah, I can introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, Tim Morton, area director for Oakland County, but I'm also in Macomb County. I also go up to Lapeer County. I go wherever is needed. And man, this guy right here is golden. And I firmly believe the Lord brought us together for a reason. Because there needs to be a connection between what's happening up in the suburbs and what's happening in the city. We need to support each other. So this is very important for me. I took some great notes. There's some great minds in this room. And when we come together, I love what you said about the process. I'm all about the process. And it's about doing something, not just talking about doing it. So we want to be part of that.
I think the young gentleman with the orange shirt on.
My name is Julius Johnson. I'm here for the next event. It was good, hearing some things. I'm from the Mesquite area, so.
You came down from Mesquite?
Nah, I just live from that area. So.
We're about to clap for you for a minute.
So yeah, I'm just listening, but nice to meet you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
How many head coaches do we have here? 4. All right. How many football head coaches do we have here? How many basketball head coaches do we have here? What head coach? What school you at, Sean? What school you at?
Brooklyn West Side.
What school you at?
Detroit Northwest.
Detroit Northwest. That's the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's the issue.
No. That's the problem.
I wasn't saying it in that way, but the biggest issue I have, I've been around for a while. Oh yeah, like my brother. The biggest problem is when a kid comes to you, if the kid have a problem that comes from the family, or the household, the parents. Y'all want all these changes. We can't get all the football coaches in the room to talk to this man. We've got one basketball coach. And all of them go all over the world and play basketball. They want to go all over the world and play basketball. They don't want to do anything to better the kids. If we had a 7-on-7, we'd have every coach here for the kids. If we had an AV tournament, there wouldn't be enough parking spaces. So the problem is the coaches. And I think that's the issue.
because we putting our kids in your hands. So if y'all want to better a kid, you got to better yourself as a coach. And that's having a relationship with a kid. If you don't have a relationship with a kid, it's never going to work. And I'm a parent. My son's 22, I'm still working on our relationship. It be dysfunctional sometimes we bust the butt. But at the end of the day, let's get the coaches together. We can come in here, talk this William, talk about him, he did. When I first met William, they told me a long time. I seen the guy having gym shoes, I said, I can make some leeway. I said, this my guy right here. You know, breakfast went from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. When I see his passion of coming here and helping kids and working with y'all just made a total different outlook on what we was doing. So when anybody called me and said they want to be a part of this, I'm like, come on down. How can we solve this? So now we got one basketball coach. Y'all gonna play more than 20 games, right? Go talk to your principals. Go talk to BD. So they can send some up to Lansing, and they can make the difference. Y'all not gonna make a difference with one coach. One coach ain't gonna make a difference. Where is your powerhouse at? Coaches ain't here. Everybody knew about this. So where I'm trying to go with this is start with the coaches. It's not about your kid all having Adidas gym shoes, Adidas jogging suits, Zenith helmets. Start from the top. If there's something that y'all want, we got to come together and do this. We had all 19 coaches, basketball coaches, 16 football coaches. And when this is over, y'all pull William aside and say, we'll put something together. Let's move from this. I think that's the leeway. Christian Fellowship wanted to come out and talk to y'all. They here. I don't got to pass their cards out. No, they here. If you meet somebody in person, you can see how much of a passion that they have. And you can feel their spirit. You can feel their energy. We all from the hood and stuff. We know somebody BS and they're just telling you a fear. So at the end of the day, once y'all form a coach association, be a part of something. Y'all all out here by yourself. Just like he said, he was waking up one day trying to get in the game is over. He only got his helmet. So at the end of the day, come together, yeah? We the largest district in the state. Just come together. You don't need coaches just from assistant coaches and coaches just going to show up and say, hey, coach. You got innocent kids in your hand. Innocent kids. When I had my son, there was a few people I could send my son we could stay at night. Just a few people. So let's build these relationships and take advantage of it. We're doing something on mental health. I don't see how many coaches bringing in kids. We got the Pistons coming, 1 o'clock. Round table, talking about mental health. We even got a lady want to talk to all the coaches about how to be a coach on the mental health side. He said something last time we had our first one. Had a kid throwing touchdowns, right? You know, everything's great. When he started throwing interceptions, coach didn't know how to deal with it, but he had a little girl pregnant. He wasn't thinking about no football. He thinking about he got to make a grown man decision now. And it's out of his hands. So let's support each other. This is all, we have 2 young ladies in here. All of us men, we all came together as one. We can go down there and probably get somebody on the board. The board is not changing because we ain't going up there ask for change. We down here telling him what he should be doing. He can't make the decision. He's going to give us some direction. I want to see how many of y'all go to your athletic director, principal, to move it to B. That's where the change is going to come. Okay, I believe you will. I believe you will because you show up to everything that we do. You show up to everything we do, and if you say you're going to do it, I believe you. But all these other coaches want to be a part of the MHA, let's say. I represent the city. What are you at now? What do y'all represent now? So if it was an event, they'll be there. I done sponsored some 707s that started at 1. I got there at 10. And kids was out there too. Coaches was out there too. They was tailgating. But now you want some rules changed. We ain't doing that. We doing something on the 27. We got 36 kids, Division I kids going to college. 36. And Curtis worked with a sound body, sound mind. I bet you we ain't gonna be able to get nobody. I bet you we ain't gonna have enough seats in for 27. So let's take it. I'm gonna let you speak. But let's come together, guys. We got all these resources. We got Christian. My brother got all the credentials. He got the credentials. Lindsay in schools. They there for a reason. People, I got superintendents calling all the time. Who do you have? Do you have a social worker we can talk to? We need a social worker over here in our school. But nobody want to step up. How can I recommend a social worker to the school if they don't show up? Then they come back, I mean, man, who you sent over here to talk to these kids? But at the end of the day, I appreciate everybody. Y'all do not have to leave. This mental health, Drake was here the first one we had. The mental health piece has helped me out a lot. And it's only been a month. My relationship with my son has gotten much better. Instead of me cussing him out, tell him go do something. You did a great job, man. It hurt. I don't feel that way sometimes. I'm out there in therapy, and that's some stuff I gotta do, man. All right, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're all right, you know. But back in my mind, I get to joke just to speed up a little more. You know, I'll be all right. But at the end of the day, y'all do not have to leave. We have food. Hopefully, some of the coaches bring in kids. All right? Y'all bring your kids anywhere else. Bring them to get some help. Some of these kids not eating. Some of these kids eating hot chips for breakfast. Y'all want them to run all around the field. They got caught. I ain't ate all day. But I ran out of energy. Your body burns what you put in. You ain't put nothing in, you ain't gonna burn nothing. Just fire over fire. So we got one team left now, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. King High School. All coaches should be there to support. All coaches. It's not about team. All them kids that played on your area team, from your neighborhood, the city is only so big. Y'all know the auntie, cousin, or somebody. Y'all know them some type of way. Let's go support what we have left. And if we stick together, I just think it'll be a beautiful thing. If it's everybody's first time, this is not going to be our last time when we're down here. This is not it. We're going to see who come back next time. Now we got a dialogue. We'll see who coming back. So I know you had a quick question.
I just want to make a statement. People look and forget about certain things, about the hidden stuff. And what I want to give credit for is this. The common factor that Horatio, Mr. Lackman, and myself have is that we come from a school that a lot of people laugh at. Detroit Olive. And what you don't understand is that the character that was installed in us at an early age, by elementary that we may not know about, is so important. I earlier said that I had an issue as far as the culture time about coaching. What I didn't tell you is this. It's like I tear him up, put my arm around him, and I love him up. Because the whole point thing about coaching is this, and what a lot of folks understand, why I still do what I do, is because, like I say, I didn't get that mentoring nurture. Like I got the mentoring part as far as the X and O's my playing on the field with my white coach. But I didn't get to understand what I needed as a black kid going back to the neighborhood to be able to do what I had to do in life, what came after football. And I say that to say this. As an assistant coach, I take way more pride in what our head coach is doing right now, trying to get ready for the game we got to get ready to play for this week coming up. So understand this. No head coach is as good without his assistant staff.
And I want you to understand this. I'm here for the benefit of what helped Detroit and Martin Luther King out. And understand this. Programs are built on certain things, and as you know, 3 of the 4 teams that were in the playoffs are here today. Yeah, Catholic, we call folks on Grand River. That's a love between us. Now, to understand this. You cannot get where we be at year in and year out, and that includes Central, without the workforce of the staff and people that care about what's going on. So now, I say that to say this. Thank you, Richard, but I also thank Osborne. We're doing what the hell we have done behind the scenes and not get credit for doing it.
We appreciate you with that. One, yes, sir.
One more thing.
Uh-huh.
What we're gonna do today